YouTube, what's good? It's your man Ribs coming to you live from Devon here in England. Still not home in London and wrapping up the trip here, but I want to give you one more video before I'm gone from this beautiful scene back here. So today we're going to be talking about beauty photography. So last weekend I actually went to Cornwall, which is a south coast region here in England. Beautiful, lots of beaches and all that stuff. And I have a friend there who's a very, very talented makeup artist. I'll put her link down below so you can check out her stuff. So she and I collaborated and basically put together a beauty shoot. I actually shot most of that shoot with my digital camera because typically for beauty, I want the utmost detail. I need to be able to take a ton of photos as well to then pick out the best ones. But of course, you know, love shooting film. So I brought a roll of Portra 400 with me, and I actually brought my Canon EOS 300V, and I adapted the Sigma lens that I was using on my digital camera onto the Canon as well. And basically, I took a bunch of beauty shots on film on 35mm Portra 400. So I'm really curious to see what that looks like today. I'm going to show you a comparison between the files. Obviously, they're not going to be very similar in a lot of ways, but I'm curious if the film actually holds up pretty well compared to the digital files. So interestingly enough, you know, 35mm film is supposed to basically be the same resolution, at least kind of pixel count, as the digital camera that I have, because it's a full frame 35mm camera as well. Of course, the digital sensor has all kinds of technology behind it, whereas film doesn't really have any of that. So we're gonna see how close we can get between the two. We're looking at skin tone, resolution, kind of editability, if that's a word. And I'm really curious to see what it looks like. So let's go into Lightroom and I'm gonna show you the initial photos just so you can get a quick sense as to what the digital files look like and what the film files look like. So we're here in Lightroom, and basically I've got these two photos highlighted, and let me actually put this away. So as you see here, they're very, very different images. They're not the same composition, all of that. Kind of disregard that bit. What we're gonna be looking at here is detail and kind of some other things. So first and foremost, if you zoom in here, you kind of look at both eyes. And this eye right here is from the digital file. And of course, you know, tons of detail. This is a 30 megapixel sensor on my Canon EOS R. So you're gonna get incredible detail. And the Sigma lens that I use is super sharp. You can see everything here, you know, all the little imperfections. On the film shot, you know, very, very different. Disregard the color balance right now and kind of the skin tone, because that's something that I do need to fix. But as you see here, you have enough detail, I guess, for film. You can definitely see the individual eyelashes, not as well as you can here in the digital file. And then of course you have some blemishes and kind of some imperfections here, which are much softer than you would see on the digital file. That's not a problem again, because it's very different, but already we're starting with a much softer product on the film shot, which may or may not be an issue. We'll see how we get when we get into Photoshop to edit that film file. So overall, you know, very, very obvious differences here. There's some skin tone issues I got to correct here, whereas here, it's much easier to get your skin tone correct in camera because you can set your white balance and do all of that. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you what the edit looks like for the digital file. So let me remove the compare. So this is the digital file here edited, and I only edited this file in Lightroom because I'm trying a new workflow nowadays where I purposefully don't go crazy in Photoshop, just to see what I can do in Lightroom only in terms of beauty photography. And it's very challenging because beauty photography does require a decent bit of editing. So as you see here, you know, things are looking pretty clean. You still have a lot of skin detail here. I didn't really go too crazy here with smoothing the skin or anything because I wanted to keep some of that real life look, but I evened out a lot of the light. I did some dodging and burning, and you know, I'm pretty happy with how this looks overall. So very good product here and it looks great, but let's go ahead and show you what I did in Photoshop actually, so that you can see how I edited the film shot. So going into Photoshop here, I'm actually gonna turn off all of these layers. And basically what you're looking at right now is, that's the raw product. And I didn't show you here, but I actually changed the white balance a bit and a little bit of the color just to get this to be a bit less blue and to reintroduce some decent kind of skin color here. So this is kind of the raw product that we're starting with. And as you can see, you know, as we zoom in, you start to see kind of the uneven lighting in the skin. You see definitely some things here that you would typically clean up for beauty. And then of course, you know, some highlights that you got to tone down. So this is kind of a raw product here, but you know, I'm not mad at it. So in Photoshop, I'm gonna show you what I did here without getting super in detail. But basically, you know, first layer right here, I just made a copy because you always want to copy what you do just in case you mess something up. You want to start from the beginning. First thing you want to do is actually do what they call frequency separation. So this is what you see here. You have high frequency and then low frequency. Frequency separation, just kind of to keep it in very simple, like simple terms, you basically are able to separate the color and the detail from the image. That way you can edit the detail separately without messing up the color, and then you can edit the color without messing up the detail. So first and foremost, we'll turn on the whole thing here. And if you kind of look at the image and see what happens when I turn it on or off, it's subtle, but it makes a big difference. I remove a bit of the kind of random imperfections on the skin, and then I also even up some of the color on the skin as well to basically make things transition a bit more nicely. And that makes a big difference, you know? It's subtle, but it really changes things and gives you a nice kind of raw product to then do some dodging and burning on top of. So you see there, it's very subtle, but it really kind of helps me out for the next step. So the next step we have here is my dodge and burn layer, which are separated into what I call local and global. And basically the idea here is on the local one, you kind of go into the small areas and even out the skin very individually, kind of all over. And that's typically where there's a lot of small kind of minutia work that you do. And that's where the really tedious work happens. But that makes a massive difference as you go along. So let me just show you right here. If I turn on the local layer, well, actually that's everything. So let me turn off the global. So here nothing's on. If I turn on the local layer, you see very quickly how the skin really kind of smoothing out across the board. It's really nice how just with dodging and burning, you can really clean up kind of the skin and give it a really nice even tone. And all you do is here, I'm gonna zoom in so you can kind of see what the difference is. But basically, this is without anything turned off. You see there's a lot of kind of dark areas around the skin here that really, and there's some bright areas too, dark and bright. And you know, around here, there's just kind of all over the place. So with the local dodge and burn with a very small brush and a low opacity, you go around and you kind of just brighten and darken things as you need in order to get a smooth product. And now you can see things are much more even. There isn't anything that kind of stands out, especially here around this area. This is typically where you're gonna see a lot of work needs to be done because you've got the bone right here under the skin that really brings out the highlights. And then this is a bit of a depression here where your eye is, so it gets a bit dark. So let me just turn it on and off again so you can see the difference. You see that's off and that's on. And this is strictly dodging and burning, nothing complicated at all, which is amazing. It's amazing what you can do with just dodging and burning. So that was that. And let me zoom out here just so you can see the next step. So once we do the local one and things are looking all right, then we go in with what I call global. And when I say I didn't invent this. This is stuff I learned from YouTube and from other photographers. So I'm not taking credit for any of this. So on the global one, you then dodge and burn around the whole face with a bigger brush. And the purpose of that is to contour. That's to give a bit of the shape back into the face. So you do that, and that really changes things up. It allows you to make the skin and the face pop in certain places. So I'm gonna turn it off here and turn it on, and you see how that really gives dimension and kind of a 3D shape to her face. So the big key things I did was burn in terms of darkening. I kind of go all the way around the face just to really make it pop out from the rest of the picture. And then I also burn in around the cheekbones just a little bit to add some dimension into that, kind of chop it up a bit. And then around the eyes here where the makeup is, I like to darken this area right here on that side and on that side, because then that helps this part really pop. And I find that for most makeup artists, that's where they really kind of make things pop a bit. And then with a lightening brush, so I take the same dodging and burning, I'll dodge to make things a bit brighter. I'll do that right here around the cheek, and then of course right in this area above the eye. Sometimes I brighten the eyes depending on how bright or dark they are. And then the nose, and then the lips, and then the chin. And those are kind of the key areas. So I'm gonna turn it off and on one more time here. So that's off, and this is on. And you know, I really like where this is. And again, this is film. So if we zoom in here, the last thing I like to do is doing a layer to really sharpen things up. And you do that with a high pass filter. So I'll set up my high pass filter on this layer up here. And you see there's a mask. I'm just gonna turn on the mask so you can see. Basically, these are the areas that I actually enable the mask in order to make things sharper. So I enable my high pass filter, and let's click out of there now. So I want you to pay attention to the eye right here, and look what happens when I turn on the filter. You get so much more detail back. The high pass filter, I'm not exactly sure how it works, but the point is it brings out so much detail from the image, and it really makes things pop just a bit more. I think with film, this step is essential here, because if you turn it off, you see it kind of gets a little bit blurry. This wasn't shot with flash at all. This was just natural light from a window. So although the lighting is beautiful, it's not that instant pop that makes things freeze and super sharp. So if you turn it back on, boom, you see how this gets so much sharper here. And of course, this is Photoshop magic, but you know, this is the kind of thing you do to really get the best product out of your film. So let me just zoom out here one last time. And what I'm gonna do is just I'm gonna put everything in a folder here, just so you can see what it all looks like when you turn it all on and off once. So here we go. So this is off. This is kind of the original product after it's been slightly color corrected in Lightroom. And this is on. It's an amazing difference. And again, this is film. This isn't a digital photo. This is film, and I think it looks really good. Nonetheless, it still has a very vintage feel to it, and it definitely looks like film, you know? There's not really gonna be any mistaking here, especially when you do a side-to-side comparison. So let's actually go back here to Lightroom, and I'm gonna compare the two just so you can see what we have. So these are the two images. Left side is digital, right side is film. Which one do you think looks better? Let me know in the comments. Do you think the film one actually did really well? Did I do a good job at using film to get some beauty shots? I think I did, but I'm curious what you think. So just zooming in real quick here. Now look at the eyes. Obviously, the digital one is still extremely crisp and sharp, and it almost looks too perfect in terms of the lighting and the detail. Whereas the film one, compared to this, looks like there's not a lot of detail, but I do think I recovered a bit more from the original file, given that I put on that high pass filter. So this is pretty cool, and I'm really impressed with the fact that I was able to do this on film. I was kind of suspicious, and I didn't really know what was going to happen, but in this case, it worked out very well. So I'm going to actually now get out of Lightroom, and I'm going to show you some other photos that I took on this day that were beauty images as well. And I really like these images because they were taken on film, like I said, and I think the product still looks really good. So let me see if I can fetch these pretty quickly here, because they're all over the place on my computer. But so this one we're looking at here, that's the file that I just showed you, so you've already seen that. And then this one right here, it's technically not a beauty shot because, you know, this is more of an editorial thing, and it wasn't shot with the Sigma, but it was shot with my Canon. Let's see, this was, I think this was my 1740mm lens. That's a 4.0 aperture, and great L glass, you know, super sharp, super amazing, but not really the thing you would use to kind of evoke style because there's very little bokeh typically. And I shot this around at 35mm, so it's a composition that I really like for fashion photography. But I got up pretty close, and you can see here, you know, there's enough detail, especially for not being a close-up shot. Let me actually open it here, that way you can see it a bit closer. So if I zoom in, you know, it's obviously not extremely sharp, but there's plenty of detail here for a 35mm photo, especially for a portrait. And when you zoom out, you know, you don't really perceive any lack of detail. So I love how this looked, and the skin's looking great. I was able to dodge and burn a bit to kind of smooth things out and do a similar process as to what I showed you previously. So very happy with how that turned out. And then there's one more photo that I want to show you. It is this one right here. And this is also a beauty shot. I kind of just took this one on a whim in between a couple different looks. But again, lots of detail here. This is from the Sigma macro, so I got in pretty close. And it's amazing what you can do with film, even though you don't get this super crisp and extreme kind of resolution that you do from a digital camera. This image I retouched a bit lightly in Lightroom as well. I didn't go too crazy, but I think I was able to clean it up to make it look a bit good for kind of what my tastes are. So very happy with this, and I'm actually really curious if I were to shoot this with a medium format camera, how much even more detail you would get. I'd get kind of, I have a Bronica 645, which is a great portrait camera, and I guess I could adapt or find some Bronica glass that's a macro lens that allows me to get really, really close up so I can do some really good beauty stuff. So maybe that's something I'll try in the future. All right, so what do you think about this beauty photography? I think it was a lot of fun to do with film. Obviously, it's not ideal, and I'll tell you why, because first and foremost, you know, beauty, you typically want as much detail as possible. So while this works, I think for nowadays standards, you know, you can get away with editorial work on film and it really gives it this beautiful look. But for beauty, where you need super detail and you want to get really, really close and get everything possible, it's probably not ideal. So I think if it was for my own work, fine. But for client work, I probably wouldn't try it at all. And then the other reason is actually just kind of the mechanics of shooting with film. You can't see your photo, obviously. And, you know, you don't have an infinite number of shots based on like the usage of a memory card. So with film, you know, a 35mm, you get 36 shots. Nonetheless, I had a great time doing this, and definitely will keep doing this again. I think it's nice to just pop off a couple film shots here and there in between your beauty shoot, and then just see what you get. Because the product obviously is very usable, and it makes me feel good to really use film in that way. Portrait and beauty work is how I started, like really, really getting into photography, and it was all on the digital side. So I don't want to lose that. You know, I want to keep doing that, but I also want to include film into that workflow. All right, y'all, so that's what I got for you. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope it was nice to see how well you can do with 35mm film for beauty shots. If you like this video, please give me a like. If you want to see more videos about portraits and things like that, let me know, because I love shooting portraits and I also really enjoy beauty work. So I'll do more of this if you want to see that, especially if you want to use different formats and different cameras. If you want to see more videos like this and other topics as well, please go ahead and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss a thing. That's what I got for y'all. Peace.